Hello and welcome to another episode of Superpowers. Today is going to be a lot of fun. I have a co-host. I've got Jane Sibbett with me today, co-hosting the show, and she has invited guest Gregory Hoag. And Gregory is quite an extraordinary person. He is spent the last 40 years studying and being incredibly interested in sacred geometry. So he'll tell us a little about that, but what's even cooler is what Gregory has done with that knowledge of sacred geometry. He's taken it and he has created a device that's called the IConnect, which I'm going to let him tell us all about. So we'll just jump right in. Hi, Jane, and hi, Gregory. How you doing?
I'm wonderful. Thanks for both being here and doing this. This is going to be fun.
So, Gregory, I told everyone a little bit about, you know, just in real sort of rough terms, what you do and the sacred geometry. But what I'd love to do is just kind of discover all that with you, and start with just kind of if you could give a brief and kind of layman's understanding to us of sacred geometry and why it's important and what you find so fun about it.
It's existence, it's consciousness. You see, every single aspect of creation, from the molecular, the atomic level, all the way up to the way the universe itself moves and acts. You see, sacred geometry deals with number and form. It deals with time and space. It is the way that rhythm, cycle, pattern all relate together and express certain aspects of creation that are consistent throughout everything. I was just reading something by Nobel Prize winner Linus Pauling this morning, and he was talking about how everything on a molecular level can be understood through the 5 Platonic solids, which are shapes that many of us are familiar with. But bottom line, what it really comes down to is that his way of describing reality, and many scientists' way of working with our world around us is to work with patterns, rhythms, cycles, and find ways we can replicate them. And that's what sacred geometry is all about. It's understanding how these patterns work together on very grand scales with time and with space. And then the more we can incorporate those aspects into our life, the more we can find that our life has perhaps more meaning to it. Actually, we can build structures, as most people in every culture have since history and prehistory. The pyramids, the different temples, the different churches in Europe were all built around particular dimensions, particular proportions. And what happens when you incorporate, those proportions and dimensions into your life, you have an experience of the way the divine works, the way source works, the way nature works. And so just as we feel totally, at home when we're sitting on a rock next to a stream in the wilderness, and, there's just something that resonates, that feels calm and natural compared to being in the middle of a city or in front of computers under fluorescent lights. And these frequencies that we sometimes have people complain about are really impinging upon us because they take away from our connection that we feel when we're in nature, when we feel that frequency there. And so that's what we're working with, and what I've been working with for 40 years is ways of creating natural structures like antenna systems that can be used to bring those frequencies, those connections to spirit and nature into our lives, no matter where we are. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. Jane, did you have a question for him in all of that?
It is so amazing to listen to you, Gregory. Last time I heard you, I was blown away. This time I heard new things that I hadn't remembered from before when we first met. I've always been fascinated by sacred geometry, and I love hearing this and more. Could you tell us how you even conceived of creating this technology that employs sacred geometry?
Okay, so what you're speaking of, the IConnect, and we can show a big picture on the screen. How I came to it. You see, this has been a process of over 40 years of working with sacred geometry, working with number. And what that has done is it's opened me up. It actually stimulated an energy flow through me called Kundalini back in the late 70s and early 80s, where energy was flowing through my body at such a rate and in such a way as to allow me to see patterns that exist prior to physical, incarnation. Like there's an energy we found with Karelian photography that exists around a plant, and the plant literally grows into that energetic space. And so it is with an animal, so it is with many things in creation. So I was seeing these patterns. I started building things that related to them. People started experiencing energy, and it opened me up to a consciousness that exists beyond the physical realm, what we tune into with our senses. So I started realizing that there is a consciousness and intelligence and many intelligences that exist beyond this dimension that have a very vested interest in our growth, in our evolution as spiritual beings. I'm talking about human beings on planet Earth. So they started supporting me in the process of discovery, and I would build one tool, another tool, and about 2 years ago, my wife, who is very tuned in and is able to access many of these same energies, she was saying, we have to build something now, and that was the IConnect, because they said, and they being these energies from a space beyond the dimensions. There are beings that exist beyond what we call source. And they wanted us to build these tools to support human beings in their evolution, in their consciousness. And so inside this little tool are over 35 antenna systems, things made with carbon fiber, things made with fiber optic. And for one example, just the shape of it itself, with this space in the center of the front and on the back side, it's a small hole. And you see the way we run energy through our bodies, like from the earth up or from the top down, as you and I were talking about the other day, Jane, that's something called a torus. And you see, a torus is a way of moving energy so that as it moves, it contracts toward the center and it forces a spiral. Now, the backside of this energy is coming out in a spiral that's growing. And you see, this is what scientists call a black hole. It's what exists at the center of our galaxy. It's what exists at the center of our solar system, the planet, the sun, our bodies. Every single atom of our existence and around us are made up of energy flows where around the center of the atom are what we call electrons. Electrons aren't like small planets spinning around a central sun, the way I thought about them when I was in grade school, but they're literally potentials for energy flow. And that energy flow moves again like a torus. So understanding this geometry and the importance of this geometry in the way energy flows in spirals rather than straight lines has affected the fact that 9 of the antenna systems I have in here are toroidal. I make them out of carbon fiber. I make them out of fiber optic. I work with certain types of glass and so forth. So just the toroidal systems. And then there are oscillating crystals. There are circuit boards. There are geometries on the face and inside where what I found is that, as I was sharing with you earlier, every geometry has 3 different perspectives. Like this is a geometry called Metatron's cube. Now, the way science works today, they often think of things two-dimensionally because we share things in books, we share things on paper, we have many of our models be two-dimensional. And yet we're 3-dimensional beings that need to start working more in the 3rd dimension before we can start incorporating even the higher dimensional realities, which is where we're going. If we're going to expand in consciousness, it needs to move out into the higher dimensions of our reality, the dimensions we still can't totally touch with our physical senses, but we do get an inkling of them through our emotional body, which has emotions on these other dimensions, our mental, which is able to tune into thought, and that moves in a way different than many things in the physical. But nevertheless, the way I use physical geometries that are 3-dimensional, and the thing is, 3-dimensional geometries can resonate with very high dimensional levels of being. It's the language of the 3rd dimension, because in the 3rd dimension we have a width, a depth, and a height, an X, Y, Z axis. So 3-dimensional objects, I wanted to get them so that I could work with energy in 2 dimensions, because that's the level I wanted to squeeze things down into for the IConnect and other things that I'm doing. So what I found was that this form, for example, Metatron's cube, if you look at it from the point or from the edge or from the face, you have 3 different, totally different geometries. They even react mathematically in different ways, some based in root 2, some based in the square root of 3. But the point is, when I have those 3 perspectives on a flat plane, and I work with them with a metallic material that's on a non-conductive background like fiberglass, I'm able to put those 3 perspectives in a circle and broadcast 3-dimensional energy into a 2-dimensional antenna system. And I have many, many antenna systems like that that I have been able to squeeze into this flat little piece, and they move energy. They directly shift the energy. So this piece is quite remarkable in that even people that sometimes aren't used to feeling energy, they're able to feel the energy coming through this. But more important than feeling it, they start watching things shift in their life. Because energy is what is needed in every situation in order to transform things, in order to create change. It's just like if we had an ice cube and we brought in the sun energy, we could turn it into water and change its state of being. You add more heat, more sun, and you're able to create a gas. So you can take water through each of its three phases of matter, solid, liquid, and gas, simply by adding energy. And that is what's going on with this piece. And whether people realize it or not, it's the major shift that's going on the planet today. And we can talk more about that if you like, about what's forcing people into change and the difficulties they're going through in not being able to change gracefully.
It is so exciting to hear all this. You know, Gregory, you had so graciously wanted me to experiment with this with some of my friends, and so you had sent me some IConnects. And what was so astonishing to me is I gave one to a friend who was completely what I call not woo-woo, just more science head. Another friend who was definitely into energy, another one that was kind of in between. And all three of them had amazing stories about what it did for them. I was particularly interested in the person who was not woo-woo, from the science background, works up on Mauna Kea, and to hear the stories about how he didn't want to be without it. Suddenly he felt really calm. It felt like he would like rub it to make himself relax in meetings and help us focus. And he didn't even know. I didn't tell him anything about it. I just said, just would you humor me and carry this around? So can you just tell me, I'm looking at this right now and I see nine forms on the face of this.
There are 9 shapes, 3 forms.
9 shapes, 3 forms.
It takes 3 of those shapes for each form, because that's the way we take things in the 3rd dimension and put them into the 2nd dimension, the 2D surface of that.
Okay, I get that. All right. So what are these forms, these 3 forms and their various angles? What are they broadcasting?
To be totally honest, I don't think it serves us to look at things in a reductionist manner.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes,
It's like, oh, this does this does that.
Yes,
but
yes.
It's, the beauty of this piece is that the way universe works is a word that was coined by Buckminster Fuller, was synergy.
Yes,
And
yes.
you see, when you get things working together and they come together in the right way, like I talked about all these different things inside here,
Yes,
when
yes.
they all come together in the right way and with the right intent, and all the work I've been doing with this, I've always held the intent of human beings being supported in their evolution in a spiritual sense, in the way they grow in consciousness. And so that has been the glue that has drawn in all the elements, held them together. And what goes on with this piece is the synergy of all the components that allow for something much, much greater than any of the components. And then the wonderful thing is, it's not imbued with my belief systems or my parameters, but rather this becomes a portal through which energy flows, and the way it flows into your life or any of the people's lives that you handed it to, it's going to be unique to what their needs are. And the more they work with it as a tool, because you see, this is something that truly is a tool, which, like a hammer that I might give you, maybe you'd crack a walnut with it and open a macadamia nut. Someone else might build a house, but when they're done, they're the ones that built the house, not the tool, not the hammer. But to try to do it without the hammer is very challenging. And that's the state we're in today.
I've got so many
I know,
questions, Greg, but I think I'll steer away from sort of development ones and how all this came to you and what that process was like. And
sometimes people like it. I don't know. Whatever.
I like that, but I also think too, if right now, as an audience member watching this, what I get is that the IConnect is a great tool, but it's kind of neutral in the sense that it's doing something, but you need to add you to it, and like your hammer example, and that a lot is possible with it, given that you go with your tool and you have an intention and you've got a direction and you employ it in some way. So I am sure that you have stories of people doing different things with their IConnect and having different results. And I just so people kind of have a little bit more of an understanding of how the IConnect works with individuals and what sorts of changes and what kinds of things happen when they are engaging their IConnect. I think a little bit of that would be really fun to hear.
Okay. There's so many fun things that start happening. One, I think people just start feeling good in their body, because literally we've been also able to measure many of the effects working with different equipment, working with a piece of equipment that was developed in Russia by a Russian physicist. And what we found is that the internal organs of the body that sometimes may be overactive or underactive, they start coming into a balance. The energy field around us, that many people, whenever there's a problem in the body, there's a break in this field. And what happens with the IConnect, just hanging on to it in 5 minutes, this field totally fills in and becomes solid. And within the body, the chakra system that's often off balance or not aligned becomes aligned. Spots within the body that aren't moving a lot of energy, we measure more energy coming through. So what that translates into for people is they sometimes go, I don't know why or what, but I just want to have it with me because I feel good. Yeah. I feel centered. Yeah. People today have this sense that they need to have protection from all the bad stuff. And, sometimes we externalize that to other people, and it's like we want to protect ourselves from the bad guys and this and that. The best way to protect, it's really something that throws us off, because it's creating a separation between us and our reality. The best protection is really for you to move your energy level to a higher state of being, so these things don't bother you, so they don't have a negative effect. You don't even create them in your reality, because it isn't drawn into your reality, because you're centered, you're feeling good, and good things start happening.
Yeah.
And
I've seen the pictures I've seen the pictures. You sent me some of the documentation too. I think you have it on your website, the pictures of the Carolyn photography and filling in the blanks after 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It's amazing. And for those who like to see that science, it's right there on your website too. It's measurable. I know that was the effect for my friends, especially the one who had never had any energy experience. Just like, I just feel so good. I feel so centered. It's beautiful.
And that's one reason why. But the real exciting things are what starts going on in people's lives. I've had women, one woman, she had a premature child who was born and poked, for months with needles, kept awake. So the child was not able to sleep soundly through the night. She brought the IConnect home. She had it on her. It was her IConnect. But her child started sleeping through the night for the first time. I've had, third-party people. It's really fun. I've had prison guards tell me that prisoners are much nicer and easier to deal with when they have their IConnect in their pocket. I've had psychologists tell me that their patients get it, understand things better, that they behave better. They go through their their understanding at a faster rate. I've had nurses in hospitals. This one nurse, the IConnect in particular, Jane, as you know, it doesn't have any way of wearing it like this. So a lot of women tuck it into their bra. And so she had lost her IConnect. And curiously enough, there was this one patient, no one cared about going into this patient's room. She was a real bear. She complained about everything. But for some reason, this past week, she was in really nice shape. And sure enough, the nurse, after a week, looked under her bed and found her IConnect had fallen under this person's bed. So even though it works better with your consciousness being applied to it, still just to have it in the space. And some of the other things I've built, like the WeConnect, which will broadcast this energy, it starts shifting things so much that I just had two people this last week. One of them is a scientist. The other one actually he writes scores for music. He wrote the musical score for I know Groundhog Day and some others. So you might know him when I say. But he said he set up a WeConnect in his house, and when his son came home from college, he said, "This house feels really different. People don't feel as much on edge anymore. There seems to be more focus, more clarity." And that's what happens when you bring these energies in, because what we're talking about is coherence. And the fact that people have such a difficult time focusing today, such a difficult time being present, such a difficult time just following through on things. It's because, we have so many energies, so many thoughts impinging upon us that we are totally in a whirlwind, like on the outside edge of our reality rather than at the core of our being. And when we move to our core and come from there, what starts to happen is a focus and a clarity that allows things to get done. People love, they get more stuff done. They do things maybe that they haven't dealt with in years, like cleaning up closets and moving stuff around. And I actually had one woman say, "Thank you, I'm not interested. I don't want to clean my house." But our house,
our interior
is a reflection of us always. And so as we start feeling focused and clean inside, we're going to reach out and shift our reality. We're going to shift perhaps the friends we interact with, the kinds of things we're doing. One woman said, I got my IConnect and I started just saying, all I want to do is be happy. 2 days later, she was fired. And she said, I'm the happiest I've been, because that job was just not serving me. It was not what I wanted to be doing. However, what that speaks to is the way we conceptualize our reality and the way it sometimes flows out. It calls for a lot of allowing within us. Once we put something out of this is what I really am interested in creating, we need to really give universe the space to come back through us in ways we may not expect at all. But as long as we're allowing, and as long as we're in that space, one of the nice things these tools do for us is they take us to a space where we can watch ourselves and not take ourselves so personally. We realize that, okay, this is a character going through things, and the way he used to interact with other people when they said and did this, he doesn't have to do anymore. It's like we're given a pattern interrupt. So just like we can look at small kids and say, I know what your problem is, but, here, let me color that picture for you. I can do it a lot better than you can. It's like, whoa, we don't want to do that. And universe doesn't do that for us either. It lets us learn through experience. And sometimes those experiences are cleansing and are a little bit painful. But if we can always come from that space of watching, which they allow us to do more and more, then it goes much easier and much faster. we can go through everything.
Gregory, the big picture as you were just explaining, and also the really small practical part too, where I saw you doing muscle testing with the audience when we were in Sedona, was just remarkable for people to, because sometimes like, okay, I hear all of these stories, could this possibly be? But you were actually able to show people right then and there, holding the cell phone in the hand, right, with the EMF. So
Yeah.
what have you seen on that physical level? Like, can you explain that to our audience?
Okay, well, what muscle testing kinesiology is about is you can work with different techniques. I, literally had people hold their arm out and I press down on the end of it. And if sometimes you can calibrate someone by asking them for their name and then telling them to make up a name, give you a fake name. And when we lie, our body collapses inside and they get weak. And so I can go through all these different things I talked about earlier that impinge upon our reality. And when someone has a cell phone next to their ear, they get very weak. And when they have a packet of artificial sugar or something in their hand, they get weak. When they feel sad about something or angry, they get weak. I can take a chair in the room, if you remember when I put it on its side, at an angle,
Yeah.
and people, watch me do it, and then I muscle test them. They go, "I'm weak. What happened?" And I say, "You didn't even see what I did." But that chair, your body reads as stress, and therefore you get weak. Just think of all the things during the day when you're driving around, you go, "What an ugly car. I don't like that dress." Or, all those judgments, all those things that aren't right in our reality. In our reality, all of this never fits in perfectly. What happens is it disconnects us. It keeps the energy from flowing. And in every one of those cases with muscle testing, when I put an IConnect in someone's hand or the heart companion near them in some way, it just has to be in their pocket near them somehow, they get strong. And that's the main thing. And whether you believe that or not, the main thing is that when people take these tools into their lives and start testing it out, because I totally guarantee them, and that means if people aren't happy for any reason, send them back. And sometimes I had this guy say, "It didn't increase my day trading fast enough, so I'm sending it back." And I was going, okay, it's valid. I've had some day traders say it does get better. But again, that's what you need to learn, the way you work with that tool. Sometimes these things take time to unfold, but whatever. Point is simply, this is something that needs to be proven by you in your life, and that's what we offer people.
So Gregory, I know I'm excited, and I know if I was an audience member watching this that I would want to be able to get an iConnect and start having my own experiences with it and my own transformations. So how do we do that?
The best way is to go to our website, and there's a link to that right below our conversation right now. And so click on that link and you can learn more about the Heart Companion, the iConnect, and the fact that we totally guarantee these. That means if you don't think that it's changing your life, if you put it down and you don't miss it when you put it down, then send it back to us. Thanks for trying it, but it's not meant for everyone. But for those of you that really want to take charge of your life in this time right now when so much energy is going on that's wanting to disperse us, wanting to interrupt that flow and connection to the love that we are, this is a tool that I have seen proven again and again to me. I mean, I love it because sometimes I get skeptical, wonder about things. Does this really work? Are people really having those kinds of experiences? And I love it when people tell me all the things that are going on with them in their lives, that it's obviously just not a placebo where they're thinking it through, but it's so consistent, so strong, and so magical that their lives truly are shifting because of the energy that comes through these tools.
That was great, Gregory. Thank you so much for being with us, and Jane, thank you for making this connection and making this all happen with Gregory. Because amazing information, amazing work that you've dedicated your life to, and it's just a real pleasure to meet you. And I really look forward to speaking to you more in the future and just about everything. So, thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, and I will be sharing more on my Facebook site about my experience with you, Gregory, and put some pictures up as well. So we'll continue this conversation so people can hear more about you, and they can click on that button below so they can experience this for themselves and test it out and the activations and everything. So bless you. I'm so glad we met. Thank you, Karl, so much for putting us all together here today.
Thank you, Karl.